Descendants of John Barney and Mary Ann Woods. There were 11 of them. And I'm going to just briefly mention a couple of traditions and characteristics, at least from my point of view. Now, I'm an adopted child. I was adopted into this family. My father died when I was very young, so I was basically raised as a single child, single parent, or my mother was a widow. I was raised as a single parent. My mother never married again. But the 11 that I know of, at least 10, because Gilner, I never met him. From my point of view, number one, they got along. When something happened, they wasn't fighting over a house here, a car there, a couple of dollars here and there. I never heard a crossword between them. I never heard them argue about anything, and I never heard them ain't get heard of anybody getting angry at anybody and not speaking and all that kind of stuff. One reason I don't remember a lot about the 11 is because when we would get together, they were speaking everything, but the children were sent outside, and the adults would talk and whatever they talked about, but their children were not in there looking up in their face and making comments and getting all in the conversation unless they wanted to come up missing a few teeth. But adult conversation was adult conversation, and children were not made privy to adult conversation. Another thing I noticed about this family is that there was they kept with the African tradition. There was no side of the family in Africa. Uh, there is no word for auntie and no word for sister-in-law. Your children are my children, and your sister is my sister. So I couldn't distinguish between who was married into the family and who, was just one of the original descendants. They were very careful about how they conducted themselves. All of them were church-going people. Nobody's a saint now. I'm not saying that, but they were very careful about what they said in front of children, how they acted in front of the children, and what they made children, what kind of information the children were made privy to. And they never really said anything discouraging. There's always something encouraging, even when they yelled, and even the few whippings I had to get. But it was always love. They always felt loved. And then they taught the children to be respectful. Um, they acted in a respectable way, and they taught us to all respect our elders, and that is tradition that I carry on to this very day. Rosa Woods Banks. She is the youngest of the 11 descendants of Lee Barney and Hattie Kennedy Woods. She was born in 1910 in Thomasville, Alabama. At some point, Rosa moved to Birmingham, and I understand she finished high school at Parker, and she did a brief stint at Miles College. Four of Mama's brothers were married to school teachers, and that's Uncle John Lee, and married to Eloise. Calvin was married to Aunt Daisy, and Malone was married to Jesse, and Bryant was married to Grizel down in Mobile. They probably encouraged them to select one of their sisters to come up and get a college degree. More than likely, Aunt Mary Alice and Aunt Ethel and Marguerite were already married by then, so Mama was probably the only single girl, so they called her up. And in those days, when you had a sibling or a relative in college, everybody chipped in and helped out. They probably gave up accommodations and a little money. Um, and Aunt Eloise she probably was inspired mainly by Aunt Eloise because Aunt Eloise was one of the first black principals in Jefferson County, Birmingham area. She was rare, prim, and proper, and about etiquette and being a lady and all that kind of stuff. And General Lee was a very kind and gentle person. Now, Aunt Jessie, Uncle Malone's wife, was just the opposite. She was very aggressive, sort of like a ramrod, because she was an Army veteran and she was a physical education teacher. Jesse taught Junior Banks how to um, swim on a private swimming pool. Her brother had his own swimming pool. Now that's back when blacks and whites couldn't go to the same swimming pool. I didn't come in contact with Uncle Calvin and Aunt Daisy a lot. They probably gave a little financial support. I don't know. They didn't really discuss all that with me. But she began her education in Birmingham, Alabama. A little more on Uncle General Lee and Uncle Malone. Now Uncle Malone was kind of laid back. He went blind after he retired from the U.S. Post Office. He had cataracts, and not long after that, Aunt Jessie passed. And when that happened, Aunt Jessie's brother Charlie George came to live with Uncle Malone. And Charlie George had these daughters, very beautiful daughters, and a lot of them were close to my age. So I would go to Birmingham. I found my way to Birmingham quite often, but I would stay with Uncle General Lee. But I would spend a lot of time at Uncle Malone's house, and we did a lot of partying and running around together. Now, Uncle General Lee, again, was very soft spoken, but he knew his way around in the streets, though. Because I remember him telling me, we went to the store, somebody said, "Don't you come over here without me." And he said, "Now, when you get out the car, look around, make sure ain't nobody lurking in the shadows or whatever." But um, Uncle General Lee and Uncle Malone were probably the two main facilitators of Mama getting her education in Birmingham, Alabama. And another tradition was to name your uh, children after your favorite uncle and aunt and all of that. And Mama was named after this Rosa Woods. Yeah, I'm not sure who she is, who she's a descendant of. But there are a lot of Ethels, a lot of Roses, a lot of Barneys, and a lot of General Lees in the family. A lot of Calvins and derivatives, Kevins, Kendalls, all of the derivatives of the word of Uncle Calvin's name. Mama got a degree in 1951 from what was then the Alabama State College for Negroes and is now known as Alabama State University. So I want the families to see this. This is a picture, junior class picture. She's down on the front row, fourth from the left. Mama was also the girls' basketball coach at Alabama State. And this is her looking all coachy with her basketball team. Well, somewhere along the line, somehow, somewhere, she met and married David Banks. Now, he was also an educator. He was an agriculture teacher, but he also worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and he worked for Tuskegee University. Now, being a farm teacher, this took him all over the world, but they were married in 1942. And they adopted this African native boy and named him after David Banks Sr. This boy is known far and wide as Junior Banks. Now, the Banks were jet setters back when black people and white people. Remember, this is pre-integration now. Black people and white people couldn't sit on the same seat at the bus, on the bus, public bus. But we had crossed 11. Mama told me we crossed the Atlantic Ocean 7 times before I was 12 years old, and on a prop plane even. This is a picture of them coming in from somewhere. They traveled the world. I remember the bullfights in Spain, which is very savage and bloody. I didn't care for them at all. Um, I remember being up on the Eiffel Tower and sitting at sidewalks in Paris, France, at sidewalk cafes, having dinner and nobody saying or doing anything. Black people, white people, Frenchmen, people from all over the world out there eating together. Get here to Alabama and black people and white people can't even drink from the same water fountain. But even though we traveled the world, we was mainly spent most of our time in Ghana in Liberia, West Africa. That's where Daddy worked. He was an agricultural teacher, and he helped develop the agricultural infrastructure of those two countries. Now, that's our house in Ghana on the left, and on the right is the house in Liberia. It's up on stilts because that house was right on the coast, and that's in case of coastal flooding. But it was on right on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. Daddy addressing some villages at a conference, and he was across some body of water in Africa, riding on a native built canoe. Mom was a teacher, and teachers can work just about anywhere. There's always a need for a teacher, and there's a teacher shortage even to this very day. So Mama taught wherever David was stationed, and this is at an embassy school. I know it's an embassy school because I have a little white boy in front, and that boy is Guy. He was a friend of mine, and he's from the French embassy, and I remember him. We partied a lot. This is an invitation from the vice president to a reception in honor of Richard M. Nixon. Daddy died in 1960. The family moved to Tuskegee, and right in the crux of the civil rights movement. And that was a heck of a time, I tell you. Rosa was a favorite sister. She was well loved and respected among the family members, and she made sure that we visited each one of her brothers and sisters at least once per year. Now, some of them we stayed with longer than others. Now, Malone, General, and Calvin lived in Birmingham, and we primarily lived with General. Sometimes we stayed weeks at a time. And then when we go to Mobile, our Mary Alice, Uncle Bryant, and Uncle Collins lived in Mobile, but we primarily stayed with Mary Alice when we went down there. She had a lot of children. I like that. And then when we would go to Thomasville, Aunt Ethel and Uncle Barney lived in Thomasville, and I loved staying with them too. Spent a lot of time with Wayne, and then a lot of time with Barney and Ellen and Agnes and Rosa and all of them over in Thomasville. They had a big family, and I loved the big family type feel. They would come visit us sometimes. That's Uncle Pete and Aunt Ethel coming by for a visit, and that's Aunt Nine, Aunt Bay, and Aunt Marguerite, and the lady on the left is one of Mama's good friends, Mrs. Virginia Knight. Notice now the accommodations, advanced accommodations on the right there. That is the sauna, steam room, powder room, um, advanced facilities. Okay, let's say no more. Mama never flaunted her degrees, but she tried to include, nor her travel, but she tried to include an Aunt Ethel and Uncle Pete and all the family members and all the travels. They joined a travel club together. And I remember seeing flyers. They went to Hawaii. I saw a flyer from Niagara Falls. They went to Silver Springs in Florida, Disney, uh, Hawaii, and the crowning one was trip to the Holy Lands. And this is on the left riding a dinghy across the Jordan River. Mama decided she wanted to get rebaptized, so she got rebaptized in the Jordan River, the same river that Jesus was baptized in. And I couldn't tell us nothing after that. The pictures looked like that because they were Polaroid pictures originally, and when I scanned them in, they were real small pictures, and when I brought them in and blew them up, they were real fuzzy looking. Mama loved the quilt. I wish I had hung on to those quilts to this day. Those are some warm, comfortable quilts. And she loved to crochet, and a lot of our family members have some of her crocheting. Junior Banks had the travel bug. This is him in Spain. Up there on the right is in France, and Washington, D.C. down there on the lower left. And went down to South America and found one of my fellow bull sitters. Um, uh, That's in South America. And we went to Italy, Barbara and I. And this is Barbara sitting on the crow's nest in the cruise ship. And this is where we were sitting when we crossed over into the Panama Canal down in South America. So here we are. The Banks family has grown from a single parent mother and son to 7 children, 2 grandparents, and 19 grandchildren, whom I love very much. We almost have enough for our own family reunion. And here's some pictures of the Banks clan. On the right there is the men. This is David Banks the second, Jr. On the far left is David Banks the third, and he's holding William David the fourth. The 2 guys in the middle, the one on the left is Kamala's husband, and on the right is Kamala's husband's father. The plus is I met my adopted sisters. We were all adopted to different families back in the day. And through Ancestry.com DNA, I was able to locate 3 of my sisters. We have 1 brother that's still out there, but Michelle, Carol, and Alice. Michelle lives in Macon, Georgia. Alice lives in California, and Carol lives in Washington, D.C. And that is our mother in the center, Fatumata. And we talk at least once a week, all of us. That's me and Barbara down at the lower left. And all being said, that I thank God that I was placed in a family of men and women of moral fortitude. They were upstanding, church going. The men believed in working and taking care of their families, and the women believed in carrying themselves like ladies in a respectful and decent way. This is who influenced who I am. The men were my role models, and the women were models for the kind of women that I would want to be married to. When I married Barbara, she fell right in with the family. But at any cost, they accepted me. I never heard anything growing up about this side of the family, oh, you adopted and all that kind of stuff. And for that, they accepted me and loved me. And to this day, I am eternally grateful. That being said, Elvis has left the building.